This podcast is brought to you by Connect First Credit Union. If you tune into the show on a semi-regular basis, you know one thing we love talking about is the future, the economic future of our province, and really looking for those green shoots of hope that we should all be clinging to as we learn how to build a new economy in this province, as we transform and transition to a new future, a bright future. And certainly at Connect First Credit Union, we're thinking about this all the time and how we can play our part and stand up for our role in helping this economy transition. But one thing that we haven't necessarily talked a lot about is when we start thinking about the diversity of this economy is how big a role artists and the arts play in that bright economic future. In fact, we're seeing budding industries really take off in film and other creative arts. But I have a really great guest here to talk about Sled Island, actually, which is a super event that's happening here in Calgary. And she's an incredible human being. So Mauds, Salvi, can I welcome you to our show? And please introduce yourself to our guests.
Well, thank you. What a welcome. So my name is Mauds Salvi. I'm the executive director of the Sled Island Music and Arts Festival, which is an event that has been around Calgary since 2007. So we're a multi-venue festival. We take place in about 20 different venues in the, let's say, downtown core Beltline in Gowood area. And we present about over 200 artists each year, primarily music, but we also have some visual arts, some film, some comedians. So great event all around.
So Maud, how did you get into the arts yourself, and where's your passion come from for supporting all these artists?
So I was interested in music from a really young age. I started when I was a teenager. I started volunteering at a local music venue, as well as volunteering at music festivals, primarily in France, because that's where I was born and raised, but also in a few places in Europe. And I guess I really got the bug. I really loved the community that existed around this, and I decided I was going to try and pursue it professionally.
And that's very cool. Now, the obvious question, given you did grow up in France, what brought you to Canada? And even bigger question, what brought you to Calgary, a very English-speaking part of this country? How did you get here?
That's a question I get a lot. So after I graduated in France, I got an opportunity. There was a grant program, bursary program for people to go get a first professional experience abroad. And I decided to go initially to Montreal because, I knew there were a lot of festivals, a pretty thriving music scene, and I was lucky to find a job there. So I went for a year, then came back to France, worked a little bit in the music industry in France, but I was really missing Canada. I really, really liked it. So then I decided to immigrate properly, do my paperwork. So I came back. And when I came back, I settled in Montreal. And I got a job with the Pop Montreal International Music Festival, which is very similar in format to Sled Island. So I spent 4 years there, which were amazing years. I learned a ton. And after my time there, I saw the job post for the executive director position at Sled Island, which, at first I didn't quite consider it right away because obviously it was in Calgary. But then after giving some thoughts, and the reality is there are only literally a handful of those jobs in Canada. And so they become available very, very rarely. So it seemed like it was kind of the perfect opportunity and sort of the logical progression for my career. And so I applied and I got the job. And so then I moved across the country for it. And it's been 9.5 years now.
So what did you see when you got to Calgary? Like, what were your observations about the artists, the music community that you found here?
What I like about working, especially in this sector in Calgary, is that because there is less of everything, culturally speaking, I find that people are a little bit less jaded about it. There's a really strong community around the arts. I find people really support each other a lot. Whenever someone wants to start a new project, there's a lot of enthusiasm. There's really people bonding together to try and make the city better and make those things happen. Montreal has a lot of great things going for it, and I really loved my time there. But I think, again, because they've been blessed with so many awesome festivals and all kinds of arts, presentation, organization, and so on and so forth. I didn't quite find that same spirit of like starting
Right
something.
on. Yeah.
And especially in my work, I feel like because, again, Calgary is bit of a smaller city, but also there is more to build. I feel like I can really see the tangible impact of my work on the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I could have had this kind of opportunity in Montreal.
That's very cool. And it's become quite an event. So for our listeners who aren't familiar with Sled Island, tell us, what is it? Like, what is it all about?
So Sled Island is mostly about discovery. So we bring artists from all around Canada and international artists as well. So we do have headliners, so to speak, people who are very well established and play around the world. But really the festival is about emerging artists. So people who, are not quite yet that really big household name, let's say, but, who are either trying to get there or who are just playing music recreationally, but who are still very serious about it and very talented. And so Sled Island was created to give a platform to those artists, because prior to the festival existing, there wasn't very much at all for these type of artists. And so I would say the best festival experience is almost to go without any plans and to just walk into a venue, talk to a few people, ask them what they're going to see, follow them, hop around. Usually your best moments are going to be the one you haven't planned. And there's always an amazing discovery that is right around the corner. Sometimes it might actually be a Calgary band you had never heard of in a venue you had never set foot in, even though you live here. And sometimes it's someone from very far away who somehow, like this year, we have this young band from Poland who are organizing their own tour in Canada and contacted us.
That's
and
cool.
We're like, can we play at your festival? We'll be in Canada this time. It's like endless possibilities if you really embrace that spirit of discovery.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, there's a concept that I wasn't familiar with, but I've heard about, which is about artist equity. That is one of the things I understand that Sled Island promotes. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I think the pandemic has brought the topic of equity in all sectors, in all spheres of life, really to the forefront. Like, it's really highlighted inequities, unfortunately.
Yes.
And so it's become a really more pressing and urgent discussion in many sectors, but included in the art sector and particularly in music. We're seeing a lot of discussions happening, musician or music worker organizing, trying to, get better condition for themselves.
Right.
And so to provide you a little bit of context, so festivals like Sled Island, with a similar format with this large number of emerging artists, they were kind of created based on the principle of like, you don't get paid a lot because you're unknown or like you're trying to get known. And so you're almost playing for exposure.
Right.
Which, as we know, exposure doesn't pay the bill, and it's not a really...
It's a hard life.
Yeah, it's not a great model, but it is how those type of festival got started. And so now we're in a position where we certainly recognize that artists are not paid enough to play our type of festival. Where it gets complicated is that when you look at the scale, so as I was saying, we have probably close to 200 emerging artists. The minute you want to make an increase to an artist fee, you have to do that time 200.
Right.
Which, in today's economy, it's tricky. It's definitely, it's not like we have tons of money in the bank and we're just holding on to it. Like if we could pay people more, we would. That being said, that's not a cop-out. I'm not saying that to say, well, that it is what it is. During the pandemic, we did, like many people, had a lot of time to do more internal work. And we really decided this was going to be one of our main priorities over the next probably 5 years, because we recognize that it's not something, for the reason I just explained, that, we can change from just a year to another. But we decided we're going to focus on it and we're going to do our best to make it happen. So to give an example, So usually bands playing our type of festival, usually you get $100 for a show. And that is whether you're a one-person act or you're a 6-people band,
Right.
which everyone can agree is very little money.
Yeah.
So we decided to tackle that however we could for that first year of of coming back and of really focusing on that work. So we decided to first start with bands from outside of Calgary because they obviously have the added financial pressure of travel. So we just built it in our budget that we were going to increase their fee a little bit, still knowing it's not still quite enough, but, showing good faith and making that first step, which, we kind of knew would probably lead us to maybe running a deficit, but we felt it was just necessary. We kind of knew that in order to move that forward, we basically need the money to come from somewhere. And so it became quickly apparent that probably private source of money would be part of the equation to find that solution. And so this is how our partnership with Connect first came to be. That was something I was pretty passionate about when I first spoke to your team and explained everything I just explained now and why it matters. And it was really awesome that they were receptive and understanding it and wanting to help us on that path. Now, I really want to stress the fact that even still now what we're able to offer this year is not nearly enough. But I think, to me, what's important is to actually start the work.
Right.
Because, we could sit around this table for hours on end and being like, well, the money just isn't there.
Right.
And decide to do nothing instead of trying to at least start moving the needle. And I think by starting to move the needle, first you keep the conversation going and you keep it front and center. And then what I'm hoping we might see is that, often even us at Sled Island, we always keep informed of what other festivals do, whatever initiative conditions they offer. It's kind of, it's good business practice anywhere. You kind of look at the competition. But when we see someone doing something really great and that, sometimes you didn't think of it yourself or you didn't just choose to put the energy in it. But if you see a good initiative that has great impact, well, then we're like, okay, we need to up our game,
Right on.
And so I'm kind of hoping that maybe if a few of us festival out there start at least committing to raising the bar for those artist fees, well, maybe we'll see other people be inspired and try and do the same.
But I would imagine, first of all, I want to commend your entrepreneurial spirit to try and solve the problem, right? You got to think out of the box and find creative ways to start solving it. We're really grateful to have had the opportunity to sponsor the event, which is going to be so exciting here in Calgary and bring life into our city. But I think that's the beginning of how you build an event that's going to have legs for the long term. And obviously over the longer term, I think it'll help you attract the best artists. And I can totally see you're onto something really, really great. So Maud, I commend you for thinking out of the box and solving some of these problems, which aren't easy to solve, as you mentioned. But let's talk a little bit about the economic impact of Sled Island, right? And of the artists that are in this community. We often think of the arts as something where it's, it's the starving artists. We don't think sometimes about the economic spin-off and benefits that the arts bring to our society. Can you tell us a little bit about the impact Sled Island has?
Absolutely. So in 2015, there was an independent organization that produced an economic impact assessment of the festival that year. And what they found was that the festival happening generated, I think it was 3.4 million in economic activity in Alberta, of which I think over 2 million occurred in Calgary. So really that gives you an idea of the impact, not just locally, but throughout the province. And so this impact, it's the sum of our own